Hello, my name is Alexi. I would like to make a video continuing this series. I don't even know which part am I making. Part six. I'm on part six of Book of Daniel, but I'm in chapter 9. So, if you just start watching this, I'm mostly focusing on prophetic Bible verses within Book of Daniel um, most of the time. So let's begin. Daniel chapter 9, verse 1 and 3. In the first year of Darius, which actually year 5, 522 before Christ BC, the son of Ahasuerus of Median descent, who was made king over the kingdom of Chaldeans in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, observed in the books the number of the years which was revealed as the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet for the completion of the desolations of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. So I gave my attention to the Lord God to seek Him by prayer and pleading, with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. The importance of this verse, if you study other books like Ezekiel, for example, it's very important to know which year the prophecy was made because some people start counting off um, at different times, like when they start thinking, well, maybe that's when talks about modern Israel, this or that prophecy, and it's like, no, you gotta know when is the prophecy made, and um, what is the time extent of the prophecy should be fulfilled in. So, interesting thing about Darius the First that he was born at 550 BC and he became the king of Persia 522. So um, so yeah, so that's why it's important to know. But let's continue on prophetic verses. So I'm just gonna bring up to verse 20, and we'll continue read from 20 to 27. While I was still speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my plea before the Lord my God in behalf of the holy mountain of my God, while I was still speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision previously, came to me in my extreme weariness about the time of the evening offspring, and he instructed me and taken with me and said, Daniel, I have come now to give you insight with understanding in at the beginning of your please. The command was issued, and I have come to you because you are highly esteemed to pay attention to the message and gain understanding of the vision. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the wrongdoing, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to atone anoint the most holy place, as you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, the Prince, There will be 70 weeks and 42 weeks. It will be built again with streets and moat, even at times of distress. Then, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined, and he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushed forth on the one who makes desolate. So, what would be my conclusion about Daniel chapter 9, verse, let's just say 24 to 27? I would argue that it's been fulfilled when first, let's just go back to the verse. So, verse 25. So you are to know and to understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince. By the way, until when was the restoration of Jerusalem was? It's described in book of Ezra and Nehemiah. So so timeline of Ezra and Nehemiah. So we're looking at this, and temple completed was at 517 BC, before Christ. So let's just say 500 years, let's just round it off. We can even say like 550 years before Jesus Christ died and rose again, because he died and rose again at 30 AD. So and like I mean, you can say 547, but let's just round it off 550. So 550, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So that's the between rebuilding of the temple. So let's just say, so from 5 BC, building of the temple till Christ's death and at 30 AD. So I mean, just look at the numbers. We know that with someone, just the point of this is that it's not just me just telling you what I think, but at least where we can kind of understand. So like restoration and rebuild of the temple till Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be rebuilt again with streets and moats at the time of distress. At the time of distress, then after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy this prince who is to come. And I would say it's Vespasian is Vespasian or Titus. Vespasian or Titus. Pretty much Vespasian was the father and Titus was the son. Interesting thing about the whole ordeal at 70 AD. 70 AD, because to some degree you can attribute to this to Vespasian because he became the Caesar or the king of Rome, but the completion of destruction is to Titus. Like literally, but you can say literally the soldiers destroyed the temple. Who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined, and he will confirm a covenant. And who is he? Is it referring to Christ or referring to the prince? And he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on wing of abominations will come. By the way, covenant, think of covenant like agreement or contract, or like a will, a document, because sometimes we automatically think a covenant that has to be like new covenant, and I would say it's agreement. And continue on, completion. So interesting part about the whole second temple is that if you look at it, why is it referring the second temple, also known in a later years as Herod's temple? Why is it referred to the Herod's temple? To me, that's the strangest thing, because as we know, Nehemiah and Ezra, they were in charge of rebuilding Jerusalem and the temple. So, but they still refer to Herod's temple because of reconstruction. So that's to me it's either something historians would not tell, or once again history can be used as a for political means or sometimes theological means. What if um, what if something happened with Nehemiah's and Ezra's temple that actually what if something happened to Ezra's and Nehemiah's temple, happens that actually it was either partially destroyed, or something happens that actually I would argue that for example, I don't know if you know, later on we're gonna, I think I did kind of talk about this guy, Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes. He ordered an altar to Zeus erected in the temple, and I wonder if, because of what happened, that's happened in 167 BC before Christ. I wonder if in Maccabees, the rebellion Maccabees, the temple they pretty much thought as unclean because of that. But then also interesting fact about the temple that where is that? And another Caligula plan. Okay. old temple built by Zerubbabel. Temple was one of the largest projects in the records. So so do they would say that the reason why is it called Herod's temple because the temples that was built by Ezra and Nehemiah um, it just was not big enough, was not cool enough, was not magnificent enough, um, which kind of problematic. I don't know. Um, if think about this, if you had like let's just say old hut, and you would destroy this old hut to build the bigger one, would you still count that hey I it's no longer the first hut but the second hut, it's totally different hut? Or now it's just to me just quite, and in order to rebuild it some things had to be have to be destroyed or the whole thing have to be destroyed at all. So potentially I would not be surprised if I would even call it the third temple. So interesting thing is that so yeah retook and destroyed much. So technically Titus is the one who actually did destroyed, and then after his father Vespasian died he became the emperor. And interesting thing once again, um, according to the again historians in Nehemiah that so let's see how long took to build. There we go. And 40 notice says 46 years, which says in Gospel of John chapter 2 verse 29 and 19 and 29. Jesus answered them, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. The Jews then said, it has taken 46 years to build this temple, and will you raise it up in 3 days? And he was speaking about the temple of his body. Um, but interesting thing is that so that's how long it took for Herod. So for Herod, from uh, 30 BC till 4 BC, from I'm sorry, 37 BC. King Herod began at 20 BC and lasted for 46 years. So it's before right before Christ. It's been rebuilt. Um, Ezra as instead of 46, um, only 3 years. I'm sorry. The walls took 52 days. So, I mean, I would argue that's technically a third temple. Basically, what I'm saying is this, that Herod's temple technically is the third temple because it makes no sense comparing temple of Ezra and Nehemiah. It took him, here we go, 20 years. It took him 20 years to complete it. So it makes, to me, honestly, it makes no sense. Something happened, the temple had to be rebuilt. And I would call it the third temple. But continue on. And I would argue in Matthew and Mark and in Luke, it talks about 70 AD, and everybody just jumps to the Gospel of Matthew 24. But interesting thing, if you look at Luke 21 it's kind of simple that it has to be local and it has to be about Jerusalem, and I will prove it that it has to be, and Christ was speaking to this specific generation which he was in, not in like 2000 year plus. He was talking about that generation. So let's read Luke chapter 21, verse 5 through 24. And while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, he said, as for those things that he said, that the days will come when there will be there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And they asked him, Teacher, when will those things be, and when will be the sign when those things are about to take place? And he said, See that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is at hand. Do not go after them, and when and when you hear of wars and tumults, do not be terrified, for those things must first take place, but the end will not be at once. End of what? And I would argue, end of the old covenant. Then he said to them, Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and at various places famines and pestilence. And there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons. I mean, we know that the Jews is no longer, well, technically you can say Rothschilds and their family and stuff, but technically speaking, the Jews is not really in control. Well, to some degree, you can say argues that like okay, they control federal bank and stuff, but that's just United States. Well, you can say that he has okay, Europe. Okay. But synagogues really like synagogues are no longer really in charge of anything. The synagogues, that's where the religious Jews would come. So deliver you up to the synagogues and prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors for my name's sake. This will be your opportunity to bear witness. Settle it therefore in your mind, not to meditate beforehand how to answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be delivered up even by parents and brothers and relatives and friends, and some of you will be put to death. Notice, some of you. Whom is he talking about? Christians in general, or is it specifically to some of the Jewish disciples at that time? You will be hated by all for my name's sake. And once again, all does not mean every single body, all kinds. I would argue both Jewish religious Jews, I guess, and Romans or Gentiles. So you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but not a hair of your head will perish, but by your endurance you will gain your lives. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation has come near. And what's desolation has come? Jerusalem doesn't say the world. Once again, it's interesting that Gospel of Luke, it's written on the base of accounts of other witnesses, if you read chapter 1 of Luke. And Matthew, it's word for word. And in Luke actually gives you explanation of some things already. So, going back. So verse 21, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And then I think it's in Mark and Matthew, it also repeats this. And the question is this: why, if it's worldwide, all of a sudden, if this is talks about the second coming, where would you flee to? From the second coming of Christ, you would flee to the mountains if you are in Judea? Come on, that's have to be about 70 AD, I would argue. Continue on. And those who are inside the city depart, and let not those who are out in the country enter it. For those are days of vengeance, to fulfill all that is written. And notice it doesn't even mention Daniel, wherein Mark and Matthew does mention Daniel. So I would argue that's, again, it's give you interpretation. Verse 23, alas for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days, for there will be great distress upon the earth and wrath against this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive among all the nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles, and Gentiles referring to Romans. But once again, if you look at the Wikipedia, 70 AD, and let's look at the armies. So we have Titus. Oh, okay. Where is it? I wonder if they have armies here, because actually it was a mix of Roman legion, cohorts and different cohorts throughout that area. But continue on. Verse 24, they will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led among all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So I would argue it's referring to 70 AD, and if you look at it, like for example in Matthew specifically it talks about this generation shall not pass away, and I would ask, which generation is it talking about? Look at like Gospel of Luke, chapter 7, verse 29 through 35. When all the people heard this, and the tax collectors too, they declare God just, having been baptized with the baptism of John, but the Pharisees and the lawyers rejected the purpose of God for themselves, not having been baptized by him. To what then shall I compare the people of this generation, and what are they like? They are like children sitting in the marketplace and calling one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not weep. For John the Baptist has come, eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you say, he has a demon. The Son of Man has come, eating and drinking, and you say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by her children. So obviously, especially it talks about John the Baptist who died during the ministry of Christ. It has to talk about that specific generation. Next, Luke 9 verse 38 through 42. And behold, a man from the crowd cried out, Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child. And behold, a spirit seized him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him so that he foams at the mouth and shatters him, and will hardly leave him. And I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they couldn't. Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming, the demon threw him to the ground and convulsed him. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the boy and gave him back to his father. Now the argument, especially when Jesus said at verse 49, O faithless and twisted generation, he was talking to his disciples. Next, it's such a long text, but it talks about with someone. Jesus, like verse 49, woe to you Pharisees. I wonder actually, you know what? When Pharisees stop, when Pharisees, how do you spell that? Let's see. When Pharisees were so interesting. Pharisees emerged about 150 BC before Christ, and Pharisees. So interesting thing is that technically the Pharisees ceased in origins, temple, oral law, theology of Pharisees, and seems like the Pharisees died out by the 2nd century, or to some degree, yeah, they stopped existing at 2nd century. So how can Christ been speaking to somebody 2,000 year plus in the future? No, it has to be that generation. Next, Luke 16 verse 7 and 9. Then he said to another, and how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take a bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, you may receive, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. So once again, notice their own generation. Like each generation and each country is different. Like for example, United States, you can make unrighteous wealth different ways, like in 16th century or 17th century or 18th century, 19th century, or 20th or 21st century. In let's just say in the beginning you can make wealth with buying land from Indians or hunting. In the 21st century you can get some unrighteous wealth from different what's called government programs but use this wealth very much to make friends, Christian friends especially. Continue on. Luke 17 verse 24 and 26. For as the lightning flashes and the lights up the sky from one side to the other, so the Son of Man will be in his day. But first he must suffer many things to be rejected by this generation, just as it is written in the days of Jonah, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. He must be rejected by this generation. Which generation? That which he was living in. Next, I know I didn't go over Matthew 24, but honestly, like if you just understand that Gospel of Luke is written on the account of other eyewitnesses, and within Gospel of Luke gives you explanation of other Gospels, the Gospel of Matthew, then it's clear that Matthew 24 is about the 70 AD. And let me give you another Bible verse, since it's sounds very similar to Matthew 24. Isaiah 19 verse 1 and 3. The pronouncement concerning Egypt. Behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud and is about to come to Egypt. The idols of Egypt will be tremble at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them. So I will incline Egyptians against Egyptians. God causing civil war within Egypt. And they will fight each against his brother and against his neighbor. City against city and the kingdom against kingdom. Then the spirit of the Egyptians will be demoralized within them, and I will confuse their strategy so that they will restore to idols and ghosts of the dead, and to mediums and spiritists. So once again, God, like the Lord, is riding on a swift cloud and is about to come to Egypt. But notice Matthew 26 verses 62 to 65, it says this. And the high priest stood up and said, have you no answer to make? What is it that those men testify against you? But Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Son of if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, you have said so, but I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his robes and said, he has uttered blasphemy. What further witnesses do we need? You have now heard this blasphemy. So once again, Christ showing that, hey, from now on, I will be sitting on a throne and be in power. And Christ says in Matthew 28, all power has been given to me on heaven and on earth. So I would say the high priest saw the 70 AD when Christ came in judgment. Revelation chapter 1 verse 7. Behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him, and all tribes of the earth. By the way, I would translate this of the land, or land of what? Land of Israel, or all tribes of the country of Israel will wail on account of him, even so. So, uh, you notice it says, even those who pierced him or crucified him. I would argue has to do with 70 AD again. Revelation 1:7. I'm a partial prayerist. I still believe in the second coming, that in 1 Corinthians 15, 2 Peter chapter 3, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 and 2, and Revelation 20 is still the second coming, even though I probably should have said Revelation chapter 20, I think it's starting at verse 6. So overall, pretty much how I would interpret Daniel chapter 9 verse 4, 24 till 27 is about the 70 AD. It has nothing to do about the second coming. That's it. It was